Hello and welcome to the Awaken Feminine podcast. I'm your host, Kaki Lee, a mindset coach and healer who's on a mission to share the love and wisdom of inspiring women from around the world who have gone through adversity and turned their pain into purpose. Today, I'm excited to be interviewing Professor Stacie Lampkin, a woman of many talents. Stacie is a board certified patient advocate, a healthcare education provider, aromatherapist, and fellow pediatric pharmacist and mama. Wow. What can't she do? I know Stacie has so much love and wisdom to share with us today. Do I have you there, Stacie?
Hi, yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Awaken Feminine podcast. Before we get started, Stacie, can you share with us a little bit more about you, what you do, and where you're joining me from?
Well, I'll start with the easy question. I am joining you from Buffalo, New York, and all the way across the pond from where you are.
Yeah.
And so what I do, well, my mama part is I'm a mama of two boys, 5 and 7, so they definitely keep me very busy. And just my big motivators to keep trying new things and learning as I go so I can inspire them to learn as I go. So I'm a pediatric pharmacist. That was my founding first passion. And then as I grew into working with pharmacy students, and I really wanted to expand what I learned, and I started learning about herbs and aromatherapy and went down that path and got my aromatherapy education. And as I was going through life and pharmacy, life hit me and I got diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years ago. And that was really pivotal for me. I would never wish that on anybody, a horrible time during that time, but it really shaped me a lot and made me appreciate life a lot more. And I decided my way as I was going through that was to give back, is really to try and pivot and do more with patient advocacy and teaching people how to advocate for themselves as if they ever, hopefully never have to, but if they ever have to navigate the healthcare system. So I
Yeah.
became a board certified patient advocate there. I'm doing well now and working on that side, as well as making sure I still love my pediatric pharmacy. So I've been still
Yeah.
working as a professor and educating. So I have a lot going on right now as I figure out the future steps, but it's all amazing.
Yeah, very, very busy woman. So, Stacie, let's dive in. So, you just mentioned that you decided to go down the pathway of being a patient advocate after you got diagnosed with cancer a couple of years ago. Can you share with us a bit about your journey, about how, that inspired you to become a patient advocate?
Yes, of course. So I think the big thing for me, that one time when I was going through the healthcare system, I was just sitting there thinking, like, somebody would say they would call me back and they never did. And at one point, somebody was like, wow, I'm really surprised, like, how fast you were able to get into from the time I was diagnosed to starting therapy. And I was like, I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I was like, well, I know the healthcare system. So I think that helped me. Like, I knew my first and second opinions were a day apart. Like, I knew how to research. So it kind of, a light bulb went off and I was like, wow, I could not imagine going through anything and not having any healthcare knowledge. Now, I do pediatrics, so oncology was, I didn't have tons of knowledge on the medications or anything like that. I just knew how to work the healthcare system. I made sure I called back if somebody didn't call back. So as I was laying in bed one day after chemo too, really thinking about my life and what I wanted to do, kind of all that just started coming together. And I was like, I think I really need to help people understand the healthcare system, because it's not quite what it seems, unfortunately, especially in the United States. For sure,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. So that kind of was my journey as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I know we all go through those changes, but when I was like, I might not have much time left. What do I want to do? I really decided that was my direction, and helping give back.
Yeah, no, that's really good that you, like, during when you were really sick, you're like, how can I give back to people to navigate the healthcare system? So that's awesome. And I mean, I'm also in pediatrics myself, and I know, like, for my parents who are getting older now, they make more trips to the doctors and, they to the hospital. And having that healthcare knowledge really makes a difference to help them as well. So, yeah, for people that have no healthcare background, it definitely is quite hard to understand where everything, yeah, how to get into everything or even understand the jargon and the language, right?
Gosh, the language. Yes, yes, the language. That's
Yeah,
probably one of the big things too I hear all the time is not knowing what they're told or what to look up. And I think as healthcare professionals, we don't often like think about it. It's second nature. So I try to actually also hope in this journey. I really want to help patients, but I want to also try and work with healthcare professionals a little bit too to say, I like really am passionate about this and I stink at it. So like I can't imagine like we think we're doing well as educators and pharmacists stuff. And I think we think we're like, oh, we ask them to repeat back. But I mean also we need to improve ourselves too.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you were saying that, when you were sick, you had this idea of going into
Mhm.
being this patient advocate. But what was that aha moment or that catalyst that really went, okay, I'm doing this, I am doing this, is not even a thought anymore. I'm going to get this started.
The that aha moment was definitely so when you're going through a hard time, and I think that was my way of getting out of it. So there was days after chemo was rough and I was not used to being the one in charge, not used to being the one not taking care of my kids, right? Going through all that. So I like remember laying in bed one day. I was like, all right, what is going to get me out of bed? Like, what can I look forward to? And I obviously look forward to taking care of my kids, but and I loved my job, but sometimes we don't all look forward. That's not usually something to look forward to when you're in the middle of
Yeah.
going through a nice journey. So I was, yeah, laying in bed one day thinking, all right, I have to find something that's going to like really inspire me to, and that's what it was. And I said, I have all this knowledge. I'm no healthcare. I've worked in multiple settings. I've been a community pharmacist. I do ambulatory care and I've been in a hospital before. So I kind of have seen the whole healthcare system. I have aromatherapy knowledge and herbal knowledge. And not that I more use that for personal use, but I'm comfortable in terms of telling patients where to look and people where to look for that information.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I have all this knowledge in my brain. Like, how do I get it out? And I was just laying there. I was like, this is what I have to do. This is the way it all can come together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it was. And that helped me when I was having some negative thoughts or bad times. I was like, all right, let's just write something down or get like think more about this path that I can do. How can I make it happen?
Yeah. And I just want to ask you a bit more probably around your journey with your cancer. Like how was it for you, like mentally, emotionally? How did you get through it in terms of that emotional and mental, the mental state? Yeah.
I honestly say the hardest part of the cancer journey was the mental state. Like the physical stuff was horrible from the side effects, but the mental, like that, like having your whole life uprooted, right? So here I am, this career driven, strong mom, and all of a sudden I can't get out of bed from side effects. So that was hard, but really the things that kept me through was finding the big thing was finding something. I was fortunate. I have a huge support network. So, and they recognize that I'm usually a very independent person. So they would show their support, but they wouldn't crowd me, right? Like I was like, I don't want anybody to see me like this. So they would help take care of my kids. So like they wouldn't see me not feeling well. And I think really having a nice agreement in terms of support networks so that sometimes families can be overwhelming so I made sure to set boundaries a little bit too,
Yeah.
make sure so that really helped that we were able like I was able to communicate. But I think really probably the biggest thing was obviously looking forward to my kids and looking forward to making sure that I fought through that, and then just reconnecting with what I wanted to do really helped, in terms of that like mental like
Yeah.
I state. Because I think when you're in those dark days, if you don't have something to look forward to, you're going to definitely just lay there and be like, what's my purpose, right? So how many times did I say, like, what is my purpose? What's my purpose? Why is this happening to me? So I tried to pivot those negative thoughts of, why is this happening? Like, what did I do wrong? I think is a common thing people say. So I tried to say, like, all right, there's a purpose behind this. Some reason this shift had to happen. Some reason I have to move forward. Like, this isn't just because I did something bad. Like, it's because I have to do something good, and I have to make some kind of change in my life. So I think kind of shifting that mindset definitely helped me get through. And then music, like, I definitely listened to some music to help, like, motivate me to say, like, get up, get moving, get up, get moving.
Yeah. That's really awesome that you were able to change that mindset, because it's such a big thing, which I think the healthcare system doesn't really, teach you to change your mindset, right? It's kind of like the pivotal thing to keep you going, and
Yeah.
keeping on
And
that path.
along those lines, right, the healthcare system didn't do anything. They did offer, I think they said, if you need support, we can help connect you with counselors or
Mm.
psychologists or anybody. Like they said, like, at one point, if you need anything, let us know. But nowhere did they say, how's your like mental state doing? How are you feel? Like, the how are you feeling was never about, right, how am I coping?
Yeah.
So it's definitely something, right, you kind of have to figure out on your own, unless you take those steps. And I know there's a lot of negative thoughts about being too weak, right? So you shouldn't go ask somebody for support, because then you're viewed as weak. So I was one of those too for a while. I was like, I can do this by myself, and I did, but I didn't. Like I said, I had a support network, but yeah, the healthcare system does not set us up for, like, what did you do wrong? And you'll ask those questions. Like, we'll say, like, oh, did I do anything wrong? And the doctors usually are like, oh no, it's not your fault. But, like, that doesn't help get past the, like,
Yeah.
well, then why did this happen?
Yeah.
So when I asked why it happened, the doctor's like, you have bad luck. I was like, well, that's not
Well, that's great.
great. So now
Thanks.
I'm bad luck. Great. So, like, I shouldn't go do anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're right there, though. There wasn't anything I remember in the healthcare system that really
Yeah.
helped in
Yeah.
that way.
It's always the physical symptoms that they ask you about, right? It's not
Yeah.
your mental state. Yeah. So, having gone through that journey of yours, what is your personal mission? What are you here on this earth to do?
I'm still narrowing it down exactly, like, what my, like, exact mission is. And when I say patient advocate too, so that was my initial, when I was laying in bed, I was like, oh, I really want to help people navigate the healthcare system and become a patient advocate. But as I've been working towards that, I realized I really want to work on the education piece and just to help people understand, once again, it's not their fault, and you have to take ownership too for a lot of your decisions. Like, healthcare has a role, and I would never say don't go to the doctor by any means, but also recognizing there's more to it than just those physical symptoms. So I really want to get, like I said, I don't think a buzzword for it. Like, I don't want to necessarily do, like, health coaching. Even with patient advocacy, I don't often, people will think I'm going to be with them in the room and help, like, make phone calls for them. But I think in order for us to really become ourselves again, and like, you have to feel what's good for you. You have to feel what is right for you. And maybe it's part Western medicine and you need herbal support, or depending on where you are in your life, some people don't want Western medicine, or maybe they all want Western medicine. So really trying to help people discover, like, what feels right to them in terms of medicine, but then also helping them recognize, once again, like, how, when you're in a pivotal life change, right? So my life's never going to be the same. I had this mindset forever that if I could just get through the cancer year, life would go back to normal. And that's not true, right? Like, no, nobody tells you that it doesn't go back to normal. Like, so how to, like, change, how to live with a condition, how to keep moving forward, instead of being like, all right, as soon as I feel better, or as soon as I'm cured, life will just go back to normal, because it
Yeah.
never will.
Yeah.
So my personal mission in life is to really kind of help people rediscover what the health means, right? I feel like health to us now, a lot of us view it as I don't have any symptoms, but some people are very sick and are very healthy at the same time. So it's more than just those physical symptoms. So not quite sure how I'm going to accomplish all that, but that's kind of my big goal, is to really redefine health a little bit as more than not being sick. Like, you can live really well with being sick.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. And it's great that you're still kind of niching down and finding what it is that your passion, like what you really want to help people with, but it's still around helping people with their healthcare and understanding the healthcare system and understanding what's best for them. Instead of, a lot of times, yes, we go to the doctors, and yes, same as you, by all means go to the doctor, but that's not the be all end all, and that's not the the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, right? There's lots
Yeah.
of different components that can help, like even the mindset stuff, which we don't get
Mm-hmm.
with your traditional Western medicine. That might be something that you add in, and as you said, the herbal,
Right.
the aromatherapy, everything else as well. So that's really cool what you're doing, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited to see how that all unfolds for you. So Stacie, I
You.
want to I want to go a bit more deep and personal with you. I know you talked about your cancer. Is that is there a particular experience that was the really most challenging thing that led to your biggest breakthrough? Was there something else, or was it around your cancer journey?
I'd probably say that was the big, like, pivotal moment, was about the cancer journey. But I'd say even before I was diagnosed with cancer, I always felt like I was missing something, right? And I just couldn't pinpoint what it was. Part of the reason I did aromatherapy and herbals was I felt in the healthcare system, even being a pharmacist, I was like, there's something more out there. Like, something's not right. It's good, but I feel like I'm just coasting, and something's missing. So I'd say the breakthrough happened definitely during my cancer journey, but I feel like, had I not done aromatherapy, or had I not looked at different herbs and different things and what else isn't in the healthcare system before I started, it might have been harder to navigate that. But it wasn't until I had this right life event that's like, all right, now I got to really figure this out, because I've always had something in the back of my mind saying, like, what's missing? And so, yeah, that was the big pivotal moment. But I think I always had and was always searching for something before, and I just never realized it.
Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you a bit more about the alternative side of things. So, with pharmacy, we're very science-based, very logical, all those things, right? And then I used to work in a community pharmacy where my boss was fully into homeopathy, into herbs and all those kind of things. And people frown upon that, right? And when you talk about herbs and things like that, most pharmacists would frown upon it. There's like, well, there's no evidence that it works. Da, 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 da. So when you started going into that alternative world, what was it like for you?
Oh, that's I definitely had lots of figuring out to do, because I almost felt like I was split in half. I was like, one side of my brain was like, yes, we need Western medicine. And then the other was, oh, you need aromatherapy and herbs. And then I was like, but there's this disconnect. Nobody wants them both. Like, and as I was going on the journey, even talking to different people that might not have even been healthcare, they're like, oh, I only use herbs and never medicine. And then you'd have, so I felt it was interesting to see both sides. And I felt like there's like these two worlds apart. So kind of as I was going through, I learned, right, that a lot of people, I think, are scared of one or the other more than necessarily that there's no science, right? So as a pharmacist, we're very trained to know everything, right? Like, you have to know everything about everything, medication related or even herb related, or anything you would ingest. So I think some of it, as I was looking back, I was like, it's fear, right? It's fear of the unknown, and it's fear of not maybe understanding the science, or there is quite a bit of science, but a lot of it, because of politics was never allowed to be studied, right, in full degrees to the same way medications are. So yeah, I definitely felt this like divide as I was going through it. And so my goal when I was doing aromatherapy was kind of trying to say, like, you can do both. Like, it's okay. Like, you can take an antibiotic if you're sick, but also take an herb to help with your symptoms and not maybe need a cough and cold medicine if you have an herbal cough and cold, but maybe if you could need an antibiotic if you're really unwell. So that was kind of my mission along that way. And I think it's still, once again, patient advocacy to me kind of pulled it all together, because I feel like that's right. What you have to feel what's right for you is don't be afraid. And some people are really afraid of the medicine, right? They're really afraid they hear side effects. They had a horrible story, and we lump the pools together. It's like we lump medicine is all one thing, and we lump herbs all one thing, and essential oils, right, all one thing. So to try and break down those silos and say you can pick and choose from all of the above. You don't have to do that. So when I was going down that path, that was probably one of my biggest was, how do I tell people I do both? Or so I actually, when I was in an herbal community once, and they asked to do introductions, and I was like just going to the herbal class, and I was like, uh-oh. I was like, what do I say? I can't say I'm a pharmacist. They're going to kick me out. So I was like, don't call on me. Just pretend I'm not here. Like, I had imposter syndrome, basically. So when I introduced myself, I was like, I'm a pharmacist, but I don't always believe drugs are the best. Like, they have their place, and I definitely agree with them. But I said, I think my knowledge base is to help understand that where their role is, where sometimes maybe they need to hold you over, but they shouldn't be your crutch, right? You shouldn't hopefully depend on them your whole life. So yeah, that was like one of my big moments when I started doing herbal, was like, how do I blend the two? So now I'm getting better at my introductions, and I'm getting better at trying to say there is more science. We just don't know about it, or we haven't read about it.
Yeah.
And there's often with meds, there's a lot of science, but there's a lot of unknown with medicine too. We just forget that.
Exactly. And on the flip side, I want to ask you, how was it doing that and then speaking to your pharmacist science colleagues?
Yeah, I didn't often talk about it as much with my colleagues. So, because I worked in an ambulatory care setting, so I worked mostly with physicians, and a lot of them knew. So if a patient often would ask questions about herbs, depending on, a lot of the physicians used herbs themselves. So right, a lot of us use this anyways.
Yeah.
So they would ask me to like look it up, and really the approach there I had was, and I would always say, like, if there's no interactions, and it's, then why not let people try, right? But like educate that we can't guarantee, as the doctor, we can't say this is your, like, we don't have as much to say how well it works. But often, in terms of the pharmacist, I didn't often broadcast that I was doing that because I was fearful. And then more recently, I guess along those lines, this just popped into my head, was, so I do an aromatherapy elective now at the School of Pharmacy I teach at. And that was actually a challenge to get through the curriculum committee. I don't know if it was inquisitive or maybe concerned, but they're like, are you going to use evidence-based medicine? How does this align with pharmacy? Like, what is the purpose here? So there was definitely concern, a lot of questions of how are you going to teach an aromatherapy elective in a school of pharmacy? But I got through and I teach it. So
yeah, that's awesome that you got through. I love that it got through, because it's I've always this very similar in that I've had this, like, there's more to just Western medicine, right? And I'm Chinese background, so I've always been interested in like the acupuncture and Chinese medicine, but it's so frowned upon. Like, it's better now, like, but when I started pharmacy, it was like, nah, like nothing that is herbal works, right? Back in the days, but now there's more evidence, so it's more acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one pharmacist who has been practicing quite a bit longer, who also did herbal and like acupuncture stuff and Tai Chi. And when I was starting to practice, he knew I was doing herbal, and he's like, my biggest advice to you is whenever you're practicing pharmacy is to leave that part of you. I was like, oh, what? But I could see from him, right, to what, like, he's been practicing 20 more years than I have. So he was probably shamed. I don't know the right word
He's
right
probably
here, but
had bad experiences, right, when he mentioned
yeah.
it.
So I was like, well, that seems like that's not where we need to go. So, but there's a lot of barriers. A lot of people are on both sides of the fence right now. So hopefully we can
Yeah.
recognize the need for all of it.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing the alternative or complementary therapies with
Yeah.
traditional Western therapies. So I just love that so much. And my thing as well is also to bring that science and the kind of spiritual together as well, because I
Yeah.
feel that is very important for people. The body mind spirit connection is very important, I think, as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That spirit side is definitely helps too, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that definitely was one thing that actually helped me through my journey as well, was connecting with that spirit side that I
Yeah.
didn't quite
Yeah.
before.
I think as very science-based people, we tend to not believe, I guess, or
Mhm.
push that side out until something happens when you kind of went, oh, I need to connect with like the whole of me, not just like part of me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, having gone through everything that you've been through, what are some tools or teachers that were really helpful in your healing process?
Oh gosh, there were so so many different things along the way. I probably say the biggest was having that aromatherapy and herbal, and already starting once again down that spiritual path. We have a great local herbal community, so locally I had a lot of support that way, that people who helped me when I was like, can I take herbs with my chemotherapy? Because right, everything you read is like, don't do anything.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of support locally with herbalists. Um, my good friends, and or like she was my herbalist at the time. So that was a big helpful person in terms of getting me through the journey. So once again, like what I want to do with other people is connect them to key people, making sure you're aware there's different herbalists out there. Other in that community too, when I would have dreams and that spiritual side, I'd be like, does this sound weird? Am I is this really happening? When so having people that believe you, right, in that
Yeah.
aspect really helped me feel like
Going
I don't want to say
crazy.
losing my mind or going crazy. I don't want to just yeah, that's what I want. But yeah, because I wasn't used to that, right? Being so science driven, as you said. And then in terms of like podcasts, or a lot of that I listened to was more business oriented, because I decided that I really wanted, once I decided I wanted to go down the I'm going to start my own side business project. So I did start listening to like podcasts, and like Amy Porterfield was one that came to mind. Kathy Heller from Don't Keep Your Day Job. So I kind of more went business, because I'm very pharmacist type A in terms of like
Yes.
structure. So that kept my brain like busy with, I felt productive, even though I wasn't doing anything because I really couldn't, but I felt productive in terms of like starting to come up with a business plan.
Yeah.
So from like the spiritual side, I really helped in the aromatherapy and urban healing side. It was really good to have like more one-on-one people. I don't personally, for me, I don't know if listening to some podcasts would have reassured some of the things that I thought were making like I was going crazy with. But I have since like started looking, like reading books. I bought a lot more herbal books, and reading aromatherapy books, and trying to also just do more research on like the the spiritual side and the karma side and the like. I know I'm blending a lot of different backgrounds, but trying to see like what connected and what
Yeah.
worked to connect with me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I totally resonate with you, because I think the first time we had a chat before a few months ago, it was, yeah, we're both like type A, you just need to be productive and do things. So um, it's just awesome how like you've kind of just accepted that part of you. A lot of, like, for me as well, it was very hard to accept, like, oh, what's all this stuff happening? Am I going crazy? Because this isn't normal. People don't talk about this stuff. And then you start delving in, and it's like, oh, actually, there's a lot of people talking about this stuff. And there is that science to it as well. It's not the spiritual woo woo, as people call it, but there,
Yeah.
there are people that combine both science and the spirit
Hmm.
together so that you can have that logical explanation of that stuff, right?
Yeah. So can I tell you my little spiritual story?
Yeah,
That
of
like
course.
really this was the one. So actually before I'd gotten diagnosed with cancer, so I usually don't have like vivid dreams. I I dream, we all dream, right? So
Yeah,
we know that, but I often don't remember them. Occasionally I will. So I remember it was a few months before I'd gotten diagnosed, and I remember waking up and seeing just light and this dark figure coming towards me, and it was like really strong, and I felt strength, and I didn't feel like afraid, even though it was like this big burly dark figure. I felt like strength, but I never actually like physically woke up. Like I remember just like waking up at my brain and not
yeah,
actually waking up. And
yeah,
then the next morning, like when I woke up, I like remembered it so clearly. Like I never remembered anything. I was like, something entered me.
yeah,
So then a few months later, I got diagnosed with cancer. So then I thought it was bad. I was like, it didn't feel bad though. So I was like talking this out with so many different people. I was like, is this like something like strength literally entered my body?
yeah,
I was like, but it was a dark figure. So maybe should it have been bad? And I was like, but it didn't feel bad. Like I kept asking for reassurance. So that was like my big spiritual like awakening
yeah,
type thing. And then so I like had strength through my cancer journey. Like the spirit literally
yeah.
like
That's awesome.
communicated with me. So yeah, so then I've been trying to work more on like how do I continue to like accept those thoughts, right? So I think forever we block them out, but I needed this one. And actually I vividly also remember not much longer after my cancer journey ended, like the spirit leaving.
Oh, wow. I've
Yeah,
got
like
full
I
body
remember.
goosebumps, so it's like,
Yeah, so I
yeah,
remember them being like, you don't need me anymore, it's okay. Like I remember this conversation, like, so the first time I didn't talk to it, but the second time I did, and I was like,
yeah,
is this crazy? Like,
yeah. It's just so beautiful that, that there's support outside, like, that we can't see, that's supporting us
yeah.
all the time. Yeah. So it's really comforting to know that as well. Like, now that I'm into all this stuff.
Yeah. And it was one of those things that we don't, right? I think too, going through pharmacy school and any science driven school, you're taught not necessarily not think like that. Like nobody says don't think like that, but
Yeah.
you just are so busy thinking about everything else and following that path that you forget about all that, and
Yeah.
often naturally don't believe it anymore, or don't think
Yeah.
it exists, or there's no science. So
Yeah, definitely. So I'm loving our conversation. So I want to ask you, Stacie,
yeah.
what do you believe is the greatest lesson you've learned in your life so far?
I'd probably say my more recent life lesson that I learned, especially being that like type A personality, is to just let go of some things so that you have time to enjoy other things. I'm definitely right, a very productive person, and I have tasks that if I feel bad for no reason, if I don't finish by the end of the day, even though I created the own tasks for me. So I think that was one of my bigger lessons, is to let things go a little bit more that really don't matter, so that I can now spend more time in terms of working on things that are actually more important in my health and like the spirituality stuff, making sure I have more time to do other things than doing maybe this task that could be put off tomorrow, as hard it is so that I want to get stuff done. I think that was probably my biggest lesson, is I think I held on to a lot of stress, and not that this was the cause of cancer by any means, but I definitely think there was more to it. Like I held on to stress, I held on to emotion. I was really hard on myself, and I think that didn't help my health. It doesn't mean it caused my cancer, but I think it didn't help my health by
Yeah.
any means. So just making sure that I spend time with my family more, and not in a productive way, like, right, I always was like, oh, we have to do something to get like this way,
Yeah.
this way, this way. So just being like, no, let my kids be kids, let me like be with them how they want to be with, instead of me being so rigid and structured.
Yeah.
Still not easy.
No, it's never easy. That's still something I'm learning to do. um, like it's the, checking off everything on your list, and if it doesn't get done, you have a, anxiety attack about it. But
Yeah.
really, I've learned in this year, just letting things go just makes such a big difference to your
Hmm.
mental health, your emotional
Yeah.
health, just in terms
Yeah.
of even holding stress in your body, right?
Yeah.
I tend to get like really like
Yep.
tight.
Shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah, is that's where
Yeah.
all the stress is. But letting
Yes.
that go, it really helps. But I know when I start getting back into that pattern, it starts coming back on again. So it's
Hmm.
now really being aware of that, like what your body is telling you as well. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've definitely also been trying to shift my mindset a little bit in terms of what productive means, because that's been helping me. So going out in nature, even though like some people are like, oh, what'd you do? And I was like, oh, I didn't do anything. But I was like, wait a second. No, I went and walked. Like I took care of myself. Like I connected with nature. I relaxed. Like those are still doing things,
Yeah.
but because there's no productive end result, like it sounds like
Yeah.
it's. So I've been trying to get better when I like don't do anything, to be like, no, I did something. Like I sat with my tea for an hour and journaled, or actually I don't
Yeah.
really journal, so that was a really bad example, but I still sit with my tea for a little bit and reflect. But still saying that like I did something, instead of me like feeling guilty that we're not doing
Yeah.
anything. But we need to recognize that that's still self-care, that's still doing something, and it's contributing to society, right? Because then we're staying healthy, so it's
Yeah.
still a way of giving back.
Exactly. Love that. And I want to ask you, Stacey, if you could time travel and go back to a younger version of you, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, time travel. Oh man, I think probably the advice I just gave myself, because everything from like high school on was I was a workaholic. Like I definitely didn't enjoy life as much as I probably should have. I enjoyed it in ways. Like I can't say I didn't enjoy my life, because I enjoyed it because I was productive, but I wonder, had I spent more time going to the movies or going to concerts, like I didn't do a lot of that stuff, because I was like, no, I need to work, or no, I need to study, no, I need to do this and help this person. Like I didn't take time for myself. So I wish I would have figured out way back then a little bit more ways to take time for me
Yeah. And
instead
that's
of just
good
being,
advice.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we touched a little bit about, a lot of change happening in the world like this year. So I want to, and there's a lot of people that are pivoting, changing the careers or changing whatever they don't like in their life. So what advice or recommendation would you give to anyone that's still got those limiting beliefs or fear that is holding them back from making that change?
As cliche as this is just do it. Like just go out there and do it. I mean that's not right as easy as it sounds, but I think the big thing that helped is asking yourself questions like, what's the worst thing that could happen if you did do it? And then the other, that especially when it comes to employment, if you're trying to make a career change, is what if you got fired tomorrow? So often we're so fearful of potentially quitting our jobs, and it's hard for me to say because I haven't quit my job, right? Like, but I still like my job a lot, and so that's part of it. But if I hated my job, and you're like, no, I need the money, or no, I need security, or no, I have to do a 9 to 5 because that's what people expect, right? If I don't do that, then people don't know what I'm doing. Then, but what if you got fired tomorrow? Like you'd have to figure it out. So you're just firing yourself.
Yeah.
Or start figuring it out along the way, right? So
Yeah.
figure out like kind of what I'm doing. If my side project business takes off, then I'll figure it out as I go. So if you have some energy or you have some passion, just take baby steps then, and just do small things. Talk to people, at least talk about it, see if people would
Yeah.
be interested. But I think you have to make those steps, and don't over plan and overthink,
Yeah.
because if you're just sitting in your mind thinking about it versus talking to other people about it. And find your people that will listen. If somebody doesn't listen, it doesn't mean, or doesn't agree with you, it doesn't mean it's bad. So then talk to somebody else. So unless like 100 people tell you that's a bad idea, then maybe you could stop there. But you're going to have people that don't align or agree or understand, depending on what their background is. So I think with all this change, especially in today's world, there's so much stress and so much burden. And so I don't know. I feel like I have to believe that everybody has a place, and everybody, we might think we were supposed to be a certain person or have a certain career, but there's nothing wrong with switching.
Yeah.
So just reminding yourself that there's nothing wrong if it didn't work out. Like it's okay. If you went to pharmacy school and didn't want to end up being a pharmacist, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
you still have this great knowledge and skills. Like you still learn skills just because
Yeah.
you don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
I'd say just let it happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you and I are both like great examples of pharmacists, like then looking at different things to do, right? Going into the mindset and mindset coaching and healing space, and you're going down you're still figuring out that the patient
Yeah.
advocacy healthcare education space. And it's okay, we still have all our pharmacist knowledge. It doesn't mean that we're bad people if we decide to change it, and it doesn't define, like, your career doesn't define you. You can have lots of different careers and show up as different, different things, different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't let that hold you back from doing what you really want to do.
Right. Especially too, if you're, depending on how you were raised or your viewpoint, I think there has been, depending on your generation, I guess, a
Yeah.
lot of just be happy you have a job
Yeah.
mentality. And I think those days are outnumbering because you should be happy if you're supporting your family. It's not, there's so many opportunities out there. People are changing jobs all the time so there's so many job opportunities out there too. Then go look for a different one. So maybe
Yeah.
you are like, I don't ever want to be an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean you can't do something else and still have a 9 to 5, right? Or whatever hours it is. So you can also, I think sometimes when people say make a shift, they're like, oh, you have to be an entrepreneur, but you can just switch careers,
Yeah.
go back.
Exactly.
So I also want people to recognize that that's not wrong
Yeah.
either. Just make sure you find happiness, because there's so many job opportunities out there. You just have to look.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder, because I think nowadays it's always like, oh, if you don't like what you're doing, become an entrepreneur. Become an entrepreneur is like this thing that you just have to start your own business if you don't like what you're doing. But it's such a great reminder that you don't have to start your own business. You can just do something else and work for someone else, right?
Right. Yeah. Because not everybody wants to do.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah,
We're
it's
learning,
not
right?
easy. Yeah. It's harder than working for someone, actually, but it's just, if you really have that passion to do it, then you would do it, right? Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So I'm going to take a bit of a turn now, Stacie. I'm all about self-love because that was a big thing on my journey. So as a busy mom, busy pharmacist, a busy professor, busy entrepreneur, what are your top three go-to activities to make sure you really give yourself that some self-love?
Probably my biggest go-to is definitely making sure I spend more time outside in nature and just like peace and quiet a little bit. And even if my kids are out, like letting them run around, like watching them have the joy of nature and letting them play in dirt and letting myself just relax while they are kids. So that even if it's not by myself, like just enjoying that like outdoor time, sitting there relaxing with the flowers and the bees. And we're coming into winter, so I'll figure out how I'm going to do this in the winter here. We get some snow, but making sure like I enjoy the season change, and definitely doing slow down. My other is to make sure I get sleep.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's my
important.
big
So important.
thing. Um, so now that I'm back to being on site, I have to readjust my sleep schedule. But if I try not to schedule anything on Saturdays and Sundays at least too early, so I can sleep in a little bit. Our kids, now that they're a little bit older, know that they can have TV unless they wake me up. So they let me sleep in a little bit to make sure. So I like the lazy mornings.
Yeah.
Occasionally. So that's my number 2. And then my number 3 kind of goes back to my productiveness at the same time. So I don't know if this counts, but it's still, I feel like a self-love thing is like my continuing to learn more about like reading my herb books, doing my herbal education. So even though some people might feel like, wait, you're not giving yourself a break. And sometimes even my husband's like, what are you doing? Like, can't you just relax and watch TV? I was like, this is my relaxing. Like, so reading herbal books, like studying herbal, learning more about like meditation and learning more about that to me is self-love. And then I try to implement it, obviously, but to me that's my time.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think if you're reading about something that you really love, that is self-love and self-care because you enjoy it. It's not like it's a chore where, back in pharmacy school, where you're like, oh, I need to learn about this really long drug. Like, what does it do? It's actually something that you really enjoy. So it is self-care and self-love. So yeah. That's awesome. I really, really love what you are going to be bringing into this world. And before we wrap up, I'd really like to ask you what right now is setting your soul on fire.
Oh gosh, I think what's setting my soul on fire is definitely seeing this like day in and day out. And the more I talk to people, so I'm an extrovert, so I like to talk to people, but it just keeps reigniting that I need to get my message out there. I need to start telling people that there's more than your health is not defined by what you have and don't have, and you have to like learn with it. So as the more I talk to people and the more they're like, yes, I didn't know that, or I haven't heard this before, this doesn't make, I really thought I was going to just get fixed when I went into the healthcare system. I think that's really been igniting my drive to continue down this path and hopefully make an impact.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. So, Stacie, thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. If people want to find out more about you and how they can work with you, where should they go?
So right now I am on Instagram, so you can follow me on there. And then the other big one is I have a website, so stacielampkin.com, and I spell Stacie for my first name. So there's contact information on there. Is if you wanted to email me, you can contact me through the website. So either way.
Awesome.
And then we'll see as I grow. But for now, those are probably the best 2 ways to connect with me.
Awesome. Well, I'll have all your details and any recommended resources available in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Thank you once again for joining me today.
Oh, this was so great.
Yeah. And until next time, I love you, I believe in you, and you are worth taking that first step to the life of your dreams.